are bright and shiny in my mind. You got me loving, hating, crazy indecision in my mind.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast, where the focus is on deer hunting, tips, tricks, tactics, and stories from across the Midwest. And now, here is your host, Aaron Blasey.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and this is episode number 39. And with me, as always, my co-host, Justin Fabian. Fabes, how's it going, man?
Oh, man, it's good. Got the heat turned up here in Iowa tonight. It's been pretty cold the last couple days. I think
you and me both, man.
Yeah, I think we're looking at like -6 or -10 tonight, and it's only going to get worse the next couple days. So kind of just hunkering down here and trying to get some work done from home.
Yep, same here. We just got an email tonight from HR that they are prepping for a noon departure tomorrow for letting everybody go home because of the snowstorm coming in. We're supposed to get anywhere from 10 to 12 inches starting right around 4 a.m. in the morning and going all day tomorrow. It's supposed to be a high of single digits. Right now it's -8, my truck said. And so we're preparing. I'll tell you, we're preparing for the worst.
Yeah, I guess that probably means I'm going to see it tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. Seems to be the trend between us from Michigan to Iowa. But I mean, on the plus side, with temperatures that low, the snow is usually not too wet, too heavy. It's always that powdery light snow, but it does add up fast, man.
Yep.
It's enough to be a pain in the ass.
It really is. And this afternoon, my wife and I and my in-laws, we took Peyton for a ranger ride, and we went. We put some miles on today, and we were just going through some sections, and the drifts were like crazy. The drifts were starting to be real tall, and it's enough to get the Ranger high centered, but it's cold. I mean, it was extremely cold, and luckily we were, my father-in-law's got a Ranger. It's a 4-seat Ranger, and it's got like car doors on it, heat, windows around it. It's basically like riding in a car. Yeah. So it's nice. You can get in there and hunker down and go and enjoy the countryside even when it's cold out. But we did come up on 34 deer yarded up in one little wood lot. It was crazy. No antlers at all. All of them were does and fawns, unless some of them had already shed, which I do have one shed buck already. But other than that, I really don't have anything to go off for sheds, really, like deer shedding. My brother-in-law, he saw 30-some deer together the other day, and he said it was either 5 or 6 bucks still holding on that he saw.
Well, yeah, I can relate to two of the things you just said. I was out coyote hunting yesterday afternoon, and I was on one of the farms down in Decatur County, and I had about an hour drive home, and I don't know, I'm probably 20 miles away from the farm, headed north, and I saw a car with its 4-ways on, stuck in a snowdrift off the side of the road. So I go to turn around to try to help him. I got a chain in my truck, and I was going to turn around and try to pull him out. And man, I didn't get a foot off the edge of the road, and my truck almost turned sideways on me, like you said, high centered. I got stuck literally 3 feet off the pavement last night. I went to turn around, I pulled over to the shoulder to let some cars go by, and the truck just sank on the passenger side. Like, my wife was with me, and she couldn't even get her door open. I mean, it was uncomfortable to try to hold yourself up in the truck, level. And luckily, I was only sitting there for about 5 minutes, and someone actually had stopped to come up behind me and stopped and gave me the old, everything okay? You guys all right? And it's like, yeah, the only thing hurt is my pride, but I got a chain.
A little embarrassment.
If you could help me get out of here, I'd really appreciate it. And he had me out in about 5 minutes, and we shook hands and parted ways. But so that was one thing that you said that I can relate to. The other is all the deer I saw. And like you said, they're all just yarded up right now. And unlike you, I think I saw more bucks than does. I was on a private farm of about 1,400 acres, but I was really surprised at the number of bucks that were still holding antlers. And I mean, just the sheer size of the group. I mean, it was like, man, I bet you I saw two groups, and I bet you the first one probably had 40 to 60 deer in it, and the other was well over 100. I mean, both on food sources, and I mean, as you would expect with this kind of temperature, but it's just nice to see that after all that you think these deer go through, to see in one place that number of deer, you know, to see that many, knowing that they survived and they're eating and they're healthy and they're doing good, like,
right.
just keep eating, you know, you're going to make it. Just keep eating. You're fine.
Yep.
I don't know. It's one of those things where it just kind of brings to light how resilient they are. You know, that's kind of where my mind goes.
Exactly. Yep.
You try to do so much to do your part and keep the pressure off, and, you know, selectively harvest the mature bucks, and you put so much pressure on yourself as far as how many does to shoot, and like, what do I do? Am I doing it right? How do I do it? You know, and then just go out there this time of the year and see how many you still have left, and it's kind of eye-opening. You're just a small role. You know, you only play a very small part in that equation.
Right. You know, and as we were driving by today, you know, I like when I see deer and when they're doing a certain thing or whatever it is, I like to, you know, like today we saw the 34 deer, and I like to stop and kind of take in what is happening at this time of year. It's for mental notes.
Right.
You know, so, you know, we had stopped and we're watching all the deer, and as, you know, as they were watching the deer run off, I was looking in the woods, you know, because they were running across the field, and trying to figure out, like, why were they in here and why were there so many deer together? Well, it was on a south-facing slope.
Yep.
So it was really sunny today, and it was colder than hell out. So south-facing slope, sun was hitting them for the majority of the day. There was beds that looked like they were, you know, all scattered around, and they were just in there hunkered down out of the wind. The wind was out of the, I think it was out of the west, some sort of the west. I think it was a northwest wind, which would have made, you know, perfect sense because they were facing southeast, you know, and letting that sun hit them, and, you know, they were just over the rise, so the wind wasn't catching them, you know, directly. So,
Right.
you know, it's just, I like to take all that information in and, you know, bank it in the memory, and just, you know, that might help me who knows when, you know, or just I'm learning more about deer as well. You know, I always like to turn something into a learning experience. So,
Yep. You know, talking about south-facing hillsides, I mean, this is a topic we could cover in a coffee call one day just to talk a little bit more in depth about. But this time of year, or even in the early spring when you start shed hunting, that's always a great place to start looking for sheds, or this time of year, a great place to start looking for the deer that have survived, because those south-facing hillsides or just the southerly aspects of your property, you know, the way the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, especially this time of the year, you know, the northern hemisphere is covered in more shade, and therefore the sun is coming more from the southern hemisphere, casting shadows to the northern hemisphere. And for that reason alone, you're going to see deer yarded up like this, you know, in those areas that have more full sun for longer hours of the day. And, you know, if you just start paying attention to that kind of stuff, you'll see, you know, that that's true across anywhere in North America, no matter what state you're in, or, you know, where your food is. I mean, and again, you can dive into this a lot deeper than that, but you could plant for that,
right?
You know, plan for that, you know, late season hunts and, you know, shed hunting strategies. And I mean, so it can go all the way as far back as planting food plots, which is what this week's topic is on, is food plots and food plot preparation.
Yes. And today, you know, to kind of kick off what and who we have on today is Jeff Nelson he's from Wisconsin. He owns Advanced Habitat Solutions, you know, and we've been getting some questions about food plots, and, you know, they were kind of generic, but we wanted to get into, and he's not going to be the only guy we have on for food plots. We're going to have a plethora of people because I want to get different takes from a lot of different people. And he was just one just to kick off this whole thing. You know, we wanted to talk about some specific things as far as, you know, what to plant where.
Yep.
You know, why to plant it there, where to put it, adjacent to bedding and a whole lot of other things as well. I mean,
I think what you're trying to say is that, this is only one strategy when it comes to food plot implementation. And, depending on where you are in the country, and what you think or what you can grow, depending on your soil type, soil quality, pH, all those factors that go into a food plot. Again, this is only one take on that. And, like most things, there's nothing wrong with any of these ideas or any of these tactics. It's just a matter of which one suits you best. So coming from Wisconsin, these are some of the principles that are going to apply to, maybe some of the guys in the northern Midwest or, the Northeast, in the whitetail range. But like Aaron said, we're going to try to get more involved and more in depth in these processes and, these applications when it comes to food plots.
Yes, definitely. And not only everybody else out there wanting to learn things, but I want to learn things. I've been doing food plots a long time, but I really don't feel like I've been doing them the right way, so I want to learn as well. So that's why I want to get, like you said, a lot of other different perspectives on there as well, other than Jeff. Just like I said just a little bit ago, with the deer and on the south-facing slopes, I like to turn everything into a learning experience. So I want to know everybody's opinion and then start applying that on my farms and see which one really works. Because, I can listen to a Mark Drury all day long about this kind of stuff. But the thing is what works for him in Iowa might not work for me here in Michigan and vice versa.
Right.
So that's why I want to get a whole, slew of people on here.
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't have said it better. I mean, there's so many different scenarios that are, unfortunately, like a lot of the things we've covered here the last few weeks, it's give and take. You got to give something up in order to get something in return. So not everybody has those same, demands versus the reward they want. So, this is one of those tactics. This is one of those strategies you can apply depending on the soil type and, what your goals are as far as, when you want to implement that herd health and what stage of that process you want to target as far as, when to keep the deer healthy, if you want to hunt over it, if you just want, to provide sanctuary, if you want a low pressure food source, if you want a kill plot, there's just so many different ways to go about this. So this is not the hard and fast black and white rule. It's just one way to look at it.
Exactly. Yeah, Jeff really gets the ball rolling with this one, so I say let's get him on here and turn this over to the interview you and I did with him the other day.
Yeah, let's get it rolling.
But before we get to that, if any of you guys are in the market for new cables and strings, look no further than America's Best Bowstrings. And if you want more information on them, go to americasbestbowstrings.com and tell them the guys from the Fall Podcast sent you. All right, on the phone with us today is Jeff Nelson from Advanced Habitat Solutions. Jeff, how you doing, man?
Great, yourself?
I'm doing good. It's we have a heat wave coming through Michigan right now.
Ours is too. It's sunny and -7.
Exactly. It's getting up to about 6 degrees or 8 degrees as a high, so it's awesome. And the vehicles don't even want to start in the morning. That's how cold it is. So.
No, my truck's plugged in and it does not want to go anywhere today. So we're good in the office.
Yep. Well, cool. I think it'd be a good day to talk about some food plotting if you're up for it.
I'm here, man.
Yeah, if you could break down, who you are, what you do, and where you're from, and maybe how long you've been doing this farm management thing, that'd be great.
Sure. Try to see how far I need to kick it back. My name is Jeff Nelson. I live in western Wisconsin, so basically in the Midwest. So a lot of things that we do can basically equate to many people. So I started land management about 11 years ago, I think. I used to own a lawn care company, and so since then I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I wasn't very good at it with the lawn mowing company with revenue and things like that. So I made some mistakes along the way, but when I got married and then we bought some land, I decided I needed a tractor to plow the driveway. And along with that, a friend of mine, we were doing the Midwest whitetail thing. So it was kind of a justification to buy a tractor. And so I had been putting in food plots for myself and some friends with rented equipment. And then with all that, I think, well, I started looking at numbers and how much a tractor would cost, and some of the tractor companies were putting out 0%. So it was like there's really no better shot to go buy a machine. And so I figured I had to make like $3,000 a year to pay for this machine. So we just kind of put a plan together and what we needed, and started advertising since the social media came out, and started advertising on that platform, and it's grown from there. But that's basically where it started from. It's just wanting a machine, the love of doing it, and then just kind of fell into place. So it wasn't like a written business plan where I wanted to be in 10 years. It was just I acted now on a situation, and it's grown, and now I realize what's that turned into. Now I have that focus and I guess just a drive to build a business now rather than just pay for a tractor.
Yep. And a lot of people have been reaching out to us and wanted to know a lot about food plots. And it was kind of a generic, loaded question. It's just like a vague, how do we do food plots? So I figured, you're a food plot guy. I'd like to have you on and talk about these. So basically, from square one, let's say you have, or someone, a client of yours has, a piece of ground that's, let's say, never been tilled up or worked up or even had a food plot in there. And where would you start with trying to prep that and, the steps along to get it, the seed in the ground to make it the best food plot that you could have?
Yeah, sure. So a customer, a friend, whatever, we just go and walk the property. And first you're going to look for the openings, either I try to stay out of the timber, but if there's little pockets of ground that isn't, turned over for agriculture. So we highlight those areas. Basically just highlight the areas that you could actually do some food plots without any logging or anything like that.
Right.
So that would be basically just finding locations. And then once you find those locations, you need to be able to figure out if you can hunt those locations without getting detected. Because if you could drop thousands of dollars into a food plot, and if you can't get to it without spoofing deer, it's going to be an unproductive food plot. But once you find something that you can actually get to, and you can get work started, and get a strategy involved, that's basically where we start. And then so there's evening strategies, morning strategies, depending on what kind of a hunter you are, what kind of time you have. So every hunter is going to be different, every property is going to be different. So that's basically where we start.
So do a lot of guys or a lot of clients come in and say, okay, I want to focus more on early season food sources, or I want a food source that's going to be good in the rut or late season, or is a lot of people asking you, I need something for a year round, good food source on the property?
Yeah, if you had to put them in order from greatest to least, it would be year round is number one. But then there's guys that I only get time early season, or I got one customer's like, I hate the cold. Once it's cold, I'm done. So so you got everybody's going to be different. Majority of people want them all year round just because they want deer to stick around. So I suppose I'd say half of them are focused on the deer and deer herd health, and there's a lot of them. The other half are probably their time frame and what's best for them.
Okay. Now, do you have, let's say we are in the early season, do you have the best green source for early season? Best green, what are you looking to plant for the best option?
Again, that's all varied by the crops that are around your farms. But typically, I always go for early season, I go for beans. Beans is the number one seller of plants that I put in the ground. And then probably followed by clover and brassica. So, and then again, early season is actually a very small time frame. So you're already, purging into the pre-rut by, mid-October, where a lot of your green stuff is already, your beans are already turning by, if they're not already turned by mid-October. So, and then another thing is, if you're going to put greens in, you can put a variety of stuff in too. whether it's side by side or it's all mixed together. I typically don't like to mix things together, but green beans, brassicas, and clovers I'd say would be my top early season blends,
Okay.
early season foods.
I got a question for you. As far as early season goes, do you ever find anybody that specifically asks for beans, but they don't want to plant them until like July or August, just for the sole purpose of having that the power of the soybean in October or early November? Like if you can find a place they're going to stay green longer.
Yeah. If I don't have them ask me that, I will recommend that to them. I mean, I've actually had, I'm not sure if this is going off point, but I've actually had, I've had clients kind of complain that their beans weren't near as good as the farmers at a certain point in time. And where I have to tell them, well, I planted these 30 days, after the farmers did, because they want theirs up, they want them dried, and they want them in their grain bin as fast as possible. You or the farmer and I have completely different objectives. And then when they find out, October 15th is here, they have, 3 to 4 foot tall green soybean plants, then they kind of shake their head like, oh, now I get it. Yep, now I get it. So if they're not asking for it, I'm explaining that to them, and that's when I put mine in. So I usually I follow the farmers by at least 3 weeks after they plant is when I go and start putting mine in. And then all clients too.
Yeah, I only asked those. I had an experience in Illinois where a drought killed a bunch of the beans, and then they tried to replant later in the summer, and it was just unbelievably good late October because they were still green. Everything else had been harvested or was yellow, and they were up that bitter taste that deer don't want out of the beans anymore. And it was like every deer in 5 miles was on this one little bean field, and it was pretty insane. Yeah,
for sure. Like I did a video blog, I think it was maybe last year or 2 years ago, and I was driving on the road and looking at all the beans have all turned and the leaves were already starting to drop. And then I pulled into my driveway where I got some plots, just some test plots, and they were all green as possible. And there's actually 2 does in there. And so that was kind of one of my, marketing things where I put on my Facebook page and my Instagram and stuff where to show people why we do this late, because a lot of times if you do it when the farmers do it, a lot of guys I'll just have the farmer plant some beans for me and I'll just buy them from them or whatever. Well, by the time your tag is valid, they're already turning. So
yeah, the point is to have them out there when the deer turn off. Like you want yours to be still green and palatable.
Yep. While I have a tag in my pocket. Yep.
Right.
I have an issue on my farm, one of my farms here in Michigan, and the soil is very sandy. And it's honestly kind of like blow sand in some areas. Do you have a certain way of combating that sandy soil, or do you put a lot of say lime down or fertilizer, or what? How are you trying to combat that when you have a sandy soil?
Well, basically, when you have sandy soil, fertilizer and lime is going to pretty much be a waste of time and money until you get your organic matter built up, because the rain will wash those nutrients right back down through your topsoil, which you don't have any topsoil. But if there were, say 10, 12 inches of your sand, it's going to be below your root system for your next planting. So you basically got to go in there with, instead of targeting plants that your deer might eat, you need to start targeting plants that will be better for your ground.
Okay.
So buckwheat is one. Even oats is okay, but you also want to avoid turning the soil. So you basically want to plant, whether you're going to do it 2 times a year or just once a year, but you want to build up as much organic matter as you can in those plots, and then just knock them down and then try to drill right into them again, because you need that moisture retention in there, and you need that stuff to lay on top of the surface to turn into black dirt and not get washed away.
Okay. So the scenario I have is it's a set-aside grass, basically, that's only about, knee-high. And then, So what would be the steps that I would need to take to go through there without, working the soil up. So would you just go in there and maybe like, brush hog it or mow it and then, then plant it, or what would be your steps?
It's already it's in set aside grass now, so it's already growing. It's already growing some decent plants.
Yeah, so it's a lot of it's like CRP set aside stuff, and down at your root system down there, there's a lot of there's like green. I don't even know what they are. I'm not a horticulturist or anything like that. I don't know a lot about the plants.
Probably just some grasses.
Yeah, yep, some grasses.
Yeah, you can definitely get it mowed off, and soybeans work really well. So I'm not sure how big of an area you can plant, but just try to do as much as you can without tilling or disking. If you can brush hog it all and get all that stuff on top, and then you can drill. If you can drill into the soil, it'll do just fine.
Okay, because I can do up to about 3 acres.
Yeah, 3 acres. Yeah, put some soybeans in there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to break that surface soil. You don't want to expose the moisture that's there. And like you said, those beans are going to propagate really well. You can drill right through that grass once you mow it, and those beans will take over quicker than the grasses will.
Yep, 100%. And then you can even overseed that with clover. Clover will grow pretty well underneath soybeans, and then clover actually puts nitrogen back into your soil. So that's what I would do. And then in situations like that too, if they get hammered, like say on one end, one end's closest to a bedding area, that one end might get hammered more than the other. So you might have a lot of real short stems or something that's not going to produce pods in towards the end of the year. Then you can just go and kind of do that again, mow it, whether it's with your lawnmower or four-wheeler, but you can redo it again, and then you can put your brassicas in there, and then you have clover, bean pods, and brassica bulbs all in one food plot. So we'll have 4 attractants in one.
Okay.
And you'll also be doing your soil. You'll be amending your soil as well at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, and that was one thing I was trying to figure out if I needed to turn the dirt up or not, because I have been the last couple of years. And planting.
Yeah, if you have sand, don't turn it.
Okay. So if I just mow it down and drill something in, whether it's beans or, is there anything else that you could drill in that would be
well, you don't really need to drill beans just because beans are a bigger seed. I mean, you could top coat clover in there, oats, buckwheat, do like your alfalfa or whatever. But then you're going to get into what you can spray, what you can't spray.
Right.
What will grow well with the other, what will choke the other out, what will impede the other one out. So whatever combination, if you want beans, you could easily do clover and brassicas. If you want buckwheat, you might not. You could probably do buckwheat and clover. But buckwheat, I don't really care what anybody says, but it's not a huge attractant for anyone unless there's literally nothing for the deer around. I mean, if your county is surrounded by all pine forests, then buckwheat will probably do great because there's no other food sources. But if you're in farm country like we are, buckwheat's not going to do anything because they'll just go across the road and get some beans.
Yeah, and that's this plot I'm talking about. I mean, within 200 yards of it is a 65-acre alfalfa field. So the deer they pile into that every day, every night. I mean, I have a high density of deer. I mean, you'll see 80 deer a night in that field. So I'm trying to figure out a way to plant something in there that they'll crave, or that might be like even a staging area, because it's a perfect little spot, and it's in between 2 pine groves. It's a long, skinny 3 acres, so it's only like 40 yards wide, but it's like really long, and it's in between 2 mature pine groves. And on the other side of the pine grove that's where the alfalfa field is. So I'm trying to figure out a staging area. It's literally one pine grove is thicker than crap. It used to be a tree farm that was grown. It's grown up now, and the deer, that's their sanctuary. And then it goes to where I want to plant food, and then it goes to my pine grove, which is you can see under all the pines because they're too mature and they don't grow anymore. And then it goes to hardwoods and then alfalfa, and it's all within a 500-yard stretch.
Aaron, are they red pines? Do you know what kind of pines they are?
I don't. I can't remember.
And in my opinion, I would say a place like that, those deer are eating, they're across the road, whatever, because it's a better food source. So instead of trying to compete with a food, have a better food source, you might be able to put the same thing in there, put a clover, chicory, and alfalfa blend. And I don't know if you'll notice or not, but you'll probably notice the deer over there eating that alfalfa about a week or two after it gets baled.
Yep.
That sound right?
Yep, it is.
So they're over there eating the younger plants. Once they get, a few weeks before they bale, they're not going to be on on it anymore. So you could plant yours, the same kind of material, and then you could mow yours more often. So that'll keep it more attractive because it's going to be the younger, lusher plants. But then another thing is it'll probably be a lot more safer or feel more secure than the other one if it's in between two pine groves. So
yep,
that would be like, those are the two things that pop right in my mind, that how you could combat, the neighboring property, or you could keep the deer over within, somewhat sort of a bow range.
Yeah, it seems like you could probably time that planting too. If you know how long it takes them to cut, they're not going to get that second cutting for another 2 or 3 weeks after the first one, and down the line. But if you plant 3 weeks after you saw them plant, that when they cut, yours is going to be prime while theirs is still coming back. But that's when the deer are eating it, is when those fresh shoots are coming back up. So you could probably time it to where you can get yours. But like alfalfa does flower, so you have to cut it or else it won't be palatable. If it goes to flower, then, it's not too far gone, but you don't want to see flowers on the alfalfa.
Right. And if when you mow that down, you're just knocking more seeds down, and you're just rejuvenating more. So, I guess in my opinion, I'm always the guy that likes to cut it after it. Once it flowers, I don't like to try to beat the flowers. I like to let it flower because you're doing good to the the bees and the butterflies and whatnot too. So you're not really, it is unpalatable to deer, like you said, but it's still doing a service to, again, your food plot and to other animals. So you don't have to be like, damn it, I didn't make it in time. You can still do it at your pleasure, but like say the weekend's coming up, go mow that stuff on Monday night after work, and then come Monday, all the stuff you mowed is going to be dried, and your young stock's going to be coming back up, and should be prime.
So you're saying I could go in there and cut that set aside grass, brush hog it, and then I can go in there and just broadcast that clover or chicory right on top of it?
I'd spray first, because otherwise then whatever you got in there will come back to compete.
Okay, so then spray and kill it after you cut it down, and then you're just saying broadcast right on it. And do you just let it, let the seed take off after that?
Yeah, if you got a way to compact it, like with take an ATV over it with a cultipacker, or even just the ATV tires, works fine. But smaller seed doesn't need to be buried as far as bigger seed. So that definitely work. And plus, there's a big difference between guys like me and guys that are doing their own food plots, because they don't have the equipment I have, which I understand, but they also have the time that I don't have.
Right.
So like sometimes the worst food plots are my own, because I don't have hardly any time to do my own anymore. But but I do things according to that. So I may not need to mow it every 2 weeks because I've got beans. So I'll do whatever I can to get beans out there, and then what needs less maintenance is what I would go towards.
Okay.
What about burning that grass? Like, is there a benefit to putting that organic material down in the form of ash versus those raw stems you get and the clippings from the grass?
Yep, I'd say there's a better benefit to it.
It just incorporates faster, or what?
I'm not exactly sure how it breaks down, but I know like even it does add fertilizer. I'm not sure what element I know, but like even in South American countries, they use slash and burn agriculture, where they just chop everything down, burn it, and then that burning is their form of fertilizer. So scientifically, how does that work, or biologically, I don't know. I could easily Google it and sound real smart, but I'm not into slash and burn agriculture, so I don't know. But I do know that it would be more of a benefit than just letting it down and letting it rot. I mean, is it going to be night and day? I don't think so. But as far as, if it was my place and I've got 20 acres of CRP and I want to burn 3 acres of it, the chances of it getting away on me are probably pretty good. So that I would go towards just the mowing and spraying.
Yeah.
You know, if you got 5-6 guys that know what they're doing, then by all means burn it.
Yeah, and I've actually kicked around doing the burn, but with the pines on each side of me, I mean, one of those pines goes and the whole thing goes. And that was my only thing. You know, I would have to have the fire department there. Enough guys to, you could do a back burn, but you also can, till up some barriers as well. I do know I've looked into that, but it's like I just feel like there's a lot of risk to it that I don't want to have to deal with if it doesn't turn out very well. But
you weigh out risk versus reward. It's the same way with hunting strategy.
Yep.
It's whether you screw up on a buck or you burn someone's pines down.
Exactly. And I actually did that clover. I did a little clover kill plot this year on another farm where I went in and I broadcasted the seed, and I just killed. I killed all the grass, so the grass would lay down on the clover seed, and it came up really well this year. I was actually pretty impressed with it. I didn't even work it in or nothing, and it wasn't a very big. It was just a kill plot. It was probably 20 yards by 20 yards in timber, in kind of a shady area, and it actually came up pretty well.
Yeah, that's one thing, like you said, you get a lot of questions on how to food plots. It's not rocket science, and you can screw up to a degree and still have great success. I mean, I know guys that want their plots to look like Pebble Beach, and then if you watch any of Winky's episodes of I forget what was the big buck he killed on, was the G3 buck, I think it was called.
Yep.
I emailed him once and said, like, man, what's that stuff you got growing in the middle? He's like, oh, it's just, foxtail or coontail. And I'm like, what did you plant that for? He goes, I didn't plant it. It's just where the sprayer missed. It doesn't look perfect.
Right.
Like, okay. So you don't have to have everything look absolutely perfect, and the deer will still eat it. I've had deer walk through my food plots and eat the leaf or eat the burning nettles and stuff, like right next to my bow stand. And it's like, I planted this stuff for you guys. You should be eating it, not the weeds.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you watch like a Lee and Tiffany show, and they've got these lush, giant fields that all these bucks are rolling around in. It's like, that's what I need to kill a big deer. Well, not necessarily.
Nope. Yeah, there's a reality, and then there's a TV reality.
Exactly. So what is, talking about kill plots, what is your definition of a kill plot?
I guess a kill plot would be where you expect to kill a deer the majority of the time. I mean, I plant a lot of food plots, and I don't hunt over them very often. But say, some property might have like a logging road, or they might have a small little clearing that you can get into, and you can put a quarter acre into, and it's in between. I guess if you want to define it, it would be a plot in between a destination food plot or destination food source, whether it be your own or an ag field, and then their bedding area. So, if you got a bunch of does you want to remove off your farm, you can plant those little honey holes where there's still plenty of daylight left, and you can kill plenty of deer on, or if you are lucky enough to pattern a buck going through one of those that you're after.
Right.
Typically, big bucks don't get killed on what you would call kill plots, but that would be my definition. It's just, like I said, something you plan on killing a deer.
Yep.
In that plot.
And it's kind of a smaller plot too, right? I mean, you're looking at something. If you want to hunt it, I would think you'd probably want to be able to shoot with a bow and arrow or whatever. If it's a gun, you want to be able to shoot that whole plot, I would think.
Absolutely, and it could even just be an inside pocket of a large food plot. So it doesn't have to be disconnected. It could easily be connected to the larger food plot. Just someplace to get them to stop, get a shot.
A kill plot, like typically if I do a kill plot, like I like to make them small, like I had said there, and so anything that comes in the field, I'm able to get a crack at. But a lot of times here in Michigan, I've done a lot of food plots here, and I've only honestly had one opportunity at a pretty good buck on a food plot. So I'm not saying they don't work, but maybe I'm doing something wrong that is not working for me.
No, I would say you're not doing anything wrong. food plots aren't slam dunks by any means. I mean, if that were the case, I'd have, my Facebook page would be filled with all my customer kills. But it's, everybody has, it's their time, how much time they have to put in. Some guys, they work hard, they work a lot, they don't hunt much, or when they do hunt, they hunt too much. So, it all goes with it's just, again, whitetail hunting is difficult
Yep.
already.
Yeah.
So to say I'm going to put food plots in, your chances go up, but it's, nothing makes your chances go up incredibly or extremely other than woodsmanship and putting your time in. And, even if you do all that, in my opinion, you usually get one crack at a good buck every year.
Yep.
Unless you hunt, multiple states, unless you're like, the Keepers or they're bouncing all around the country and they just get, the more opportunity, the more opportunity you hunt, the more you hunt, the more opportunity you get.
Right. Yep. And what, when you're designing a food plot, do you have a certain shape that you like to have, or is it just kind of what the topography or the land kind of gives you?
Both. So, if it's a large food plot, and if the customer wants it all planted, we'll plant it all, but it won't be like, so let's just say there's a 3-acre rectangle. It won't be a 3-acre rectangle. It'll be 3 acres of, where are the deer bedding, where are they coming out, and we'll architecture something, because deer will flow in these, in the path of least resistance. So whether we use corn or we use beans or whatever, there's tons and tons of ways to make them, to try to get them to go to A to B, to manipulate their movement. If it's a smaller, like I've done plots it ends up being a square, but it will, in the end, will kind of look like a D shape, to where basically deer are forced to go in between a tree stand and, like, say, some standing corn. There's some plots that I actually will fall a big tree, and I'll plant the soybean, or I'll plant the plot, and then I'll yank that tree into a spot where, it'll still grow because the tree is dead, obviously, but the deer will have to go around that tree, and that'll put the deer in range. So tons and tons of strategies that I've done over the years and I've seen. And so yeah, and then if there's just rifle guys where they can shoot from one end to the other, then that's fine. Then we don't need to really put in too much strategy into it. But most of the guys I plan for are all bow hunters.
Yep. And let's say you're on like a client farm, and your farm, this farm is in a good spot to mold, or maybe it's just a general rule of thumb. What percentage of the farm do you want to be a food source? If it's like 100-acre farm, do you want a certain amount of acres to be a food source? How do you combat that?
Yeah, that's all, each situation is different, but I'd say it's number one, as much as you can fit in there and afford. I mean, if you can put 50 acres of food plot in there, you're overkill by all means. But I know, like, one customer's only got, I think, 5 acres, and we'll put all that in there. And we've also had loggers come in, and we've doubled the food plot size from logging and pulling out all the stumps and making more food plots. But as much as you can afford is about the number one. If you have a bunch of tillable, you'd be wasting your time putting it all in food plots, because the deer aren't going to consume it all.
Yep.
So, I guess the normal rule of thumb is 5-10%, but that doesn't really apply if you either A, can't afford it, or don't have the room.
Okay. And when you're planning food plots, are you trying to give the deer a variety in each food plot, or are you planning, maybe this plot might be clover, and a couple hundred yards away there might be a soybean plot, or are you trying to put in one plot maybe 2 or 3 or 4 different variations so they have a variety?
Okay, so bigger food plots, I'd want a variety, because you're going to be observing for one. You're going to have your cameras on the edge of that, so you're going to want to attract as many deer as you can into that food plot all year long. So you're going to want to have a variety of greens and beans or greens and grains. But if they're smaller plots, you definitely don't want to put any of the plants that say like soybeans, or once they eat them, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So those small plots is where you want to put your oats and your clover and your chicory and blends like that, because when they eat them, they're just going to keep rejuvenating and coming back. So so bigger food plots, definitely the best variety you can. Smaller ones, the regenerative species are the ones that you don't want to put in those.
Okay. And there's, a lot of guys out there that are just, the everyday working guys that, maybe might not have a lot of acreage or a lot of ground to be able to do a food plot, such as like, let's say you have like a cornfield or an ag field, and then it kind of butts right up to the woods, but maybe there might be, a trail that goes along in between the woods and the field. What would you recommend for, maybe possibly putting a little food plot in that trail? Do you have a certain seed or, something that works good next to, if it is a cornfield or a bean field? Do you have anything that's like a no-brainer for there?
Yeah, those are clover's no-brainer for those, because anytime you have long linear food plots, like I said, clover and oats or brassicas, are, because deer are when they're gonna feed in there, they're gonna mill around, and they're typically gonna keep on moving. Deer don't normally go out and do any food plot and just stand there and gorge. They're always moving. I'm not sure if that's just for trying not to get eaten or get killed, but
right.
So there's really you could almost put anything in a situation like that. It all depends on access. If you can get there to mow it, if you can get back there without running over the farmer's beans or the farmer's corn, and then get back there to mow it, you can put your clover in. Sometimes, let's say you put soybeans in there or something, and you tell the farmer, hey, when you're going to spray, can you spray mine too? I mean, so that could be a factor.
Yep.
So yeah, it all depends on people's situations, but I would say anything is fair game for something like that, as long as it gets ample sunlight and water.
Yeah, and clover does pretty well in shady areas, doesn't it?
It does about as well as you can get, yeah.
So if there's a little shade on that field edge possibly or something, that might do okay there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not necessarily the shade that's the issue. The issue of stuff real close to timber is this leaf drop. So
okay.
I've had a plot inside my woods the first 2 or 3 years that I was doing food plots commercially, and it ended up looking great. But then as soon as all the giant maples and oaks got their leaves on it, just completely covered it up and became useless. So I stopped doing it.
Yep. And let's say a guy doesn't have access to a tiller or any way of working up ground. Is there another way, that somebody could do, work up the ground or, put in a plot without those kind of tools? Let's say a tractor or something.
If you don't have a tractor, you can use your ATV. If you don't have an ATV, then you can use a rake.
Yeah. Get out there and do a poor man's plot.
So you've seen Winky's series of poor man's food plots. You can it takes a lot of sweat equity, and and for most of these guys that are bow hunting, you're buying $1,000 bows, you're buying $30 for an arrow. So most people got a little bit of money. They can either hire a guy like me, which is cheaper than buying and cheaper than renting, which again, it's still not super cheap, but you can either find a guy that's local to do it for you, or like where I'm at, I can think of probably 3 off the top of my head that will rent the auto tractor. I mean, I did it for years, so you can rent out a tractor at I guess I'm not sure what they'd be called. There's like an all-star rental or something around here. So even if you rented an ATV, a super small tractor, borrow a lawnmower from a buddy, whatever. I mean, I've seen guys put in food plots to their lawnmowers and a drag, and that's all they had back there. And it can get to be fun, but there's also, you might have to cross creeks and all that sort of stuff. So
yep. So anything you can get your hands on.
Anything you get your hands on, that's not gonna make your arms fall off and your fingers bleed.
It makes for a better story too if you go out there with a rake and just do it all with hand tools.
I don't know if I agree with that or not. That's a long-winded story when you got to rake a whole food plot by hand.
Well, I always like to say too, you always get out what you put in. So if you go put a lot of hard sweat equity in, you'd like to think that you might have that on your side for when a good deer comes through your area and you'd be able to kill him there.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. And there's also, I don't want to be a pessimist, but there's also there where you put in a shitload of work and you don't get anything out of it.
Which happens more often than not, I think.
Yeah, exactly. You can buy a brand new pickup truck, but as soon as you hit a deer, it sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think I got one last question here. We're almost up on time. And this one is, so let's say on a property, you locate the bedding areas where the deer are bedding. Where do you place your food plots, or what's the process that you take from there where you want to place the food plots from the bedding?
So just trying to think of a couple situations I've already done. So again, you have to find those spots that are able to be planted, without doing any excavating or any,
Yep.
Timber. But if you can get those, I almost want to say I don't want my food plots real close to bedding. I know does will bed real close to food.
Yep.
As close as they can actually get. But then again, you got to play that game where you can get in and out of your stand. And if a deer watches you get into your tree stand, those deer are going to hop up and they're going to go backwards.
Yep.
So, what I would almost do, and what I normally do is, we'll put a food plot in, and if we're going to work on bedding, we'll try to enhance bedding someplace else where we want the bedding. So you can easily go and deter deer from bedding in a certain area. It's easier to get them to not bed there than it is to bed there.
Right.
So yeah, it's all. I guess I just wish I had a written down, Bible, if you will, of how you should attack these things, because if you get too close to bedding, you can have a really unproductive food plot
Right.
during daylight hours for sure.
I mean, really, it's like it's all situational too, I guess. Every farm's
Yeah.
different. I guess,
Yep.
do you have a certain amount of distance that you'd like to stay away from a bedding area, or, and that could vary too with cover and everything, but let's say you have mediocre cover, is there a certain, distance, couple 100 yards, or, maybe
I'd
it's just.
say at least 100, 150 yards would be as the closest I'd want them to be.
Yep.
And everyone's had certain situations where it seemed too easy or whatever, but it's, deer are, like we all know, they're way more hypersensitive than we are as far as sight and sound, and if you walk out there, they're going to see you if they're within 100 yards for sure.
Right.
Whether, I'm not sure how well their memory is, I would say it's better than ours. So, even if they lay there in their bed for another 3 hours, they're not going to come prancing down in front of you.
Yep.
So if it's, let's just say I walk into a property and I see a nice little hillside where there's deer going to lay there, then they're going to watch this open area, I think you're screwed. So I would probably try to put a food plot on the other side of that hill if possible, if it's not the neighbors. If I wasn't the neighbors, or if the neighbors was across and mine's on this side, I would probably put up some screening or somehow figure out how to get into your stand without those deer seeing you. Even if they're on the hillside, if you got to do some TSI and just block their view, I guess I'd go that route. Or if say you could do the the Egyptian wheat kind of
Yep.
strategy as far as screening your approach.
Yeah, screening is huge, especially for access, enter and exit. And that's one thing I've been experimenting the last 2 years on my farm is, hinge cutting and TSI, and making hinge cutting for bedding, but also making it so I can get into my stands that are, right on top of my bedding areas. And that's a relatively inexpensive way, with just some sweat equity and chainsaw and
Yep.
some gas and a couple days in the off season to do that. And you can have, it looks like hell, but it's what the deer love, so it's kind of
Oh, absolutely.
you got a trade-off too. Do you really want your farm to look good, or do you want it to perform, as a hunting mecca, I guess you could say?
Well, if you look at any marketing, signs or any commercials on TV, people aren't normally holding up pictures of how their farm looks. They're holding up pictures of big bucks. So
Exactly.
I would vouch for saying that, function over style any day of the week for me.
Yep, I agree.
Even like with those variables too, as many farms as I've been on, you'll get a guy who's got, just paid $500,000 for a farm, and it's, all timber on the outside, and there's a big giant ag field in the middle. And I kind of was like, oh man, this is going to be a struggle. Because if you have a big piece of property where it's open all the way on the outside that you can hunt versus, versus again, the field in the middle versus the timber in the middle, having deer bed in the middle of your property and then pull them out towards your food plots is by far the best and easiest way to do it, or to even look good.
Yep.
But it's such a challenge to do it when you're coming into the middle of your property and all the deer got to come from the outside.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all sorts of different, like I said, variables that we got to deal with, and so we got to learn the best ways to take those variables into consideration. And you might have a property where you can only really hunt early season, or you can really only hunt the rut. Sometimes you might have a pond on your property and nobody else does, and that pond is the reason you keep getting this, the biggest buck of the year on camera. There might be a big, thick, brushy fence line that's the only reason why deer are coming through.
Yeah.
We used to do deer drives here in Wisconsin. I think I've quit for the last 8 years. I don't think I've done one anymore. But we used to slaughter deer by going in people's backyards, like where they have their LP tank.
Yeah.
And deer they'd bed in those things because they're getting pushed around for a week, and we would kick them out of the places that you would never think. I mean, I know we had one run through somebody's swing set because it was right by their LP tank. And so it's like, my God, these animals are just so adaptive. And so yeah, it's just a game you got to play with their brains. If you have a neighbor that doesn't hunt versus a neighbor who's a farmer or he doesn't hunt, and then you get the next guy who's just as diehard as you are.
Yep.
All that's got to go into consideration and into your plan.
Right. That is for sure, man. Well, hey, I'm gonna cut you loose here. We're getting up on time. Do you, Justin, have anything in closing? Any closing thoughts or questions?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like you said, it's not rocket science stuff. I don't think it's just kind of just understand your property before you decide what you want to do with it, and then from there, figure out what kind of soil you have to work with and what's going to grow best for you.
Yeah. So if I could get everybody to walk away with one thing, it'd be to make a checklist. On the top of your checklist is going to be, can I get there in and out without spooking deer? And then if I can do that, what should I plant, or what could I plant? We need to figure that out based on your soil, the quality of your soil. And then once you figure out the quality of your soil, you can figure out what plants will work well. Don't worry about the deer, worry about your soil. Because if if it won't grow, it's not going to do any good. So worry about the soil, what will grow in the soil first. And then once that starts getting better, then you can start going into the plants, 2-3 years on the road that will grow, and the deer will absolutely be attracted to. I saw even in your, when you texted me earlier about some of your questions was, what food source would deer crave over acorns? And the answer to that is pretty much nothing. I mean, they'll eat what they want. So when they're on corn, they're going to be on corn. When they're on acorns, they're going to be on acorns. But they still will want a variety. I mean, so they might be on acorns for 2 days. They might be on greens for 1 day. And then back to acorns, whatever.
Yep.
Some parcels only have red acorns. Some only have white. So again, it's just it's not cut and dry. There's no Bible for deer hunting, and there never will be. It's been going on for way too long, and no one's figured it out.
Nobody's cracked the code.
So, yeah, you will not crack the code as much as you try. So just sit back and scout from afar, and that's another key. One thing I've learned in the past is I used to scout way too much. The number one thing that's helped me is being busy. So the busier I am, the less time I have to spend in the woods. And I've had the last 2 years have been the best hunting seasons for seeing more deer, and that's because I haven't stepped into the property until October.
I can agree 100% with you on that.
Other than in my tractor cab,
Right. This last year was the same thing for me. I just did not set foot on the farm and saw a lot of good deer and a lot of deer that I wanted to see in daylight. So
yeah, and it wasn't, like I said, mine wasn't on purpose. It's just I just didn't have any time.
Yep.
And it turned out to be great.
Yeah.
I don't normally plug too much stuff, but I've been using the Cuddy-Back or the Cuddy-Link system cameras this last year, and that actually helps too, because I can set 15 cameras out in the property, and I check all the cameras via one card, and that one sits in my lawn. And so I come home, pull the one card out of the camera, I check it, and it tells me every camera, battery life on them, so I can literally check 15 cameras with one card, and that's kept me out of the woods. I mean, there's nothing better than going and pulling cards and seeing what you got.
Right.
And if you now that we can do that, either via text message or email, or just pulling one card like on these Cuddy Links.
Yeah, those Cuddy-Links are the cat's meow, man. We have some on our family farm this year and did the same thing, and it helped out a lot too.
Yeah. Least amount of intrusion is key.
Exactly. Well, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you, Jeff, for, your services or even just, tips and tricks or anything, where can you direct them to go to contact you?
The best place is Facebook. I've been starting to do some Instagram, but that's not the best platform for conversation, but Facebook definitely is. Advanced Habitat Solutions on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man, and taking time to do this, and I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this, and I just really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me. It was awesome. I love podcasts, so it was great to be a part of one for once.
All right, well, there you have it. Some really good information from Jeff. And again, like we said at the beginning of this, this is not the hard and fast, black and white, kind of right and wrong answer to everyone's question. This is one way to look at this, depending on, if the soil type supports these kind of decisions, or depending on your geographic location, or just your goals as a hunter. Like if you just want to feed deer in the late season, draw deer in the early season, or if you want to set up a kill plot or a micro plot, closer to bedding, further away from bedding, depending how much property you have to work with. There's just so many factors in this that, it's not something that you should, set the clock to, or, set your schedule to, but if these kind of things apply to the situation that you're in, or that you have any kind of control over, I just hope you keep it in mind, and hope it helps you going forward from here on out.
Yeah, I really don't think anybody has the right answer, from farm to farm. Really, I think it's what works best for you and what works best for me. You can find those instances where maybe on your farm it might work the same as on my farm, but what Jeff's saying, or what anybody else out there saying, or Justin and I, it doesn't work for everybody. So what I'm trying to say is you just have to try these things, and that's what all we're trying to do is just shed light on the things that people do and the practices that people try, and see if it works for you. That's really all we're trying to do. And I appreciate Jeff coming on and doing this, and taking time out of his day and coming on to talk food plots with us. And I think it worked really well.
Yeah, I do too. I'm looking forward to kind of expanding on this topic, and maybe from here on out we try to find other people to talk about this thing, this subject from different geographic regions. Like obviously as we move further south, like into the Midwest, we're going to get into some more fertile soils, some more loamy kind of soil that's just that typical Midwestern awesome agricultural ground that has a lot of versatility. And then again, still moving further south, like Oklahoma, and North Texas, even probably some of Kansas, where it's starting to turn back into sandy, more well-drained soil with not a lot of moisture. It'd be cool to kind of see the diversity in the outlook on this type of stuff when it comes to food plots, from different people across the region.
I agree 100%. I think that'd be cool to do that, and and just try to, like you said, the region thing. Just try to get within everybody's region, a lot of people's region anyway, and just see what works best for them, and maybe we can enlighten some other people to try some different things.
Yeah, definitely. I know even on the East Coast, like I know some people in Georgia that are dealing with a lot of clay soils. I know once you get across, west of the Mississippi, it turns back into sand. But, we don't want to exclude anything. We want to cover all the bases and try to bring this thing full circle and at least put the information out there that we know we can get our hands on and put in front of the listeners. So we're going to do our best to do that.
Yes, we are. And with that note, I think we're going to wrap this up. I just want to remind everybody, like I always do, is please go on to iTunes or, CastBox or Podbean or, Stitcher or Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast, and, leave a rating and leave some feedback. Like I said, it's cool to hear from you guys to see, what you guys are thinking and if you like it or if you don't like it, or, we just like to see that feedback, and it helps us deliver a better product as well from week to week. And that's all I got, man. So I don't know. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't. Like I said, the only thing else I can say is I've already said I'm looking forward to kind of bringing more diversity to the subject based on geographic location. So just expect that in the future here as we get rolling into the off season, getting ready to plant in the spring.
Yeah, for sure, man. Don't forget, everybody, this Friday we're going to have an all-new coffee call, and we're actually going to do it all on shed hunting. 'Tis the season. Sheds are dropping, and we're going to be able to start finding them here soon. So can't wait to get that one out to you, and thanks for listening.
Cross on your brain.